Welcome, everyone, to the 2021 Chelsea Mayoral Candidates Forum. I'm Paul Schisler. I own a business in Chelsea and served on the Chelsea Area Chamber of Commerce Board for 7 years. I'm in the Rotary Club. For 1 year, I was the president of the board. Since I live in Lima Township and don't vote on city ballots, I have a fairly neutral position in this matter. It's my privilege to be here and to guide us through this evening's events. First of all, I'd like to thank the candidates for being willing to serve in this role as mayor of the city of Chelsea. It is not a job for the faint of heart or the casual volunteer, but it is rather a job for skilled, thoughtful people who care about this city, the large, well-trained team that keeps it operating at such a high level, our families, our businesses, schools, parks, recreation, our community in general. I contend that they serve out of a devotion and affection for this beautiful city. At a few dollars per meeting, I don't think anybody's doing this for the money. My thanks also goes to those of you who took time from your day to log in and learn more about these candidates who are competing for the office of mayor. I would also note that this forum is brought to you by the Chelsea Area Chamber of Commerce. Assisting me this evening across the desk from me here is Terrace Aarons, the executive director. There's his hand waving. Wave again, Terrace. Okay, there he is. He's going to help me keep on track and keep this rolling along. I'd also like to thank Denise Coulieri, who is the administrative assistant at the chamber office, as well as the board members and the ambassadors. I'll be asking the candidates as many questions as time allows. The questions came to the chamber anonymously through the website. There were too many to ask them all, and many were duplications. We included the ones that most relevant to this election and did not choose the ones which were personal regarding any given candidate. One last comment, and then we'll get started. For those of you who may not be familiar with the role of mayor, I would refer you to the City of Chelsea website and recommend that you read about the powers and duties of the mayor in the city charter, section 3.7. Now let's get started. I'd like each of the candidates to introduce themselves and make their opening statements, which are limited to 3 minutes each. By the flip of a coin, we'll begin with Sherry Albertson and then follow with Jane Pacheco. I will be holding up these cards to keep us on time, 30 seconds, and then, oh, time's up. So Sherry, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm always at a loss as to how to begin talking about myself. I've been living in Chelsea since 1981 with my family. Both of the kids went to and graduated from Chelsea High School, all the way from elementary to middle to high school. I worked for a number of years at the hospital while I was pursuing my education. This is something I never talk about, but I have an extensive educational background and an extensive research background. So I have, my undergraduate is from Central Michigan, and I hold a BS in both community development and public administration. I did my graduate work and did a dual degree program at University of Michigan, a master's in psychology and a master's in clinical social work. I then had a post-grad research appointment to the University of Michigan's Institute of Social Research, and which our field of study was Detroit, as well as the community service agencies in Detroit, providing services to vulnerable individuals. Our research was titled Gender and Racial Disproportionality in the Juvenile Justice System. So from there, I reached a crossroads in which I had to decide whether I was going to stay in academic research or go into the field and try to bring change to those situations. So in the meantime, I also pursued a PhD in research. My research is entitled The Psychosocial Antecedents of Intimate Partner Violence. I am deemed an expert witness in Southeastern Michigan and a child advocate for best interests of the child in situations of custody in relation to family and domestic violence. I also was on the emergency response team for Washington County, in which we responded to large-scale neighborhood and organizational catastrophic events. And I did 14 and a half years. I worked in the Downriver area, providing medical and behavioral health services to lower socioeconomic families and individuals. I am now currently at an agency in Ann Arbor. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Jane, go ahead, 3 minutes.
Thanks. I would also like to just extend my appreciation, Paul, to you and Terrace and the Chamber for putting on the candidate forum. I grew up here in Chelsea. I'll try to get through an extensive, life history, but I grew up here. I graduated from Chelsea High School, what is now the Washington Street Education Center, back in 1991. I attended the University of Michigan undergrad and shortly thereafter moved to Atlanta for about a year and wound up in Denver for about, almost 9 years. I worked in Denver in commercial real estate. And when I decided to move back to Chelsea in 2003, I was joined by my partner, Dennis Crawley, and in utero, my now 18-year-old Gavin. We had another child 2 years later, Kira. She's almost 16. And the reason for the move, in addition to being in this community, I wanted to raise my family near my family. And my folks are here, my brother's here. We have an extended family in Michigan. So I've been back as a resident since 2003. Professionally, I've worked in commercial real estate, nonprofit management, local food systems, entrepreneurial things, youth development, and most recently, social justice advocacy with an organization in Ann Arbor called Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice. Over the last years, I've served on city council since 2013, and I've been proud to be involved with lots of local issues that affect us on an everyday basis. I was happy and honored to work on initiatives that have helped our city be more transparent and accountable and responsive to citizen requests. And there's just a host of things that have happened in the last years that I've been proud to be part of. In addition to the work on council, I've done work with our state house rep, Donna Lazinski, hosting housing diversity forums, and Washington area transportation study, hosting transportation town hall meetings. I currently sit on the CAP DART committee for our commission for a liaison position, and work with other local elected officials in the region to talk about things like housing and transit and economics and community development.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Okay, now what we're going to do is take turns answering each of these questions first. We'll start with the first question, Sherry, and then Jane. The next question we'll do Jane and then Sherry. And these are 2-minute answers. And again, I'll keep track of the time here for you. So Sherry, to start off, what specifically do you believe is the role of the mayor of Chelsea?
Well, in the city charter, the fundamental and most primary role is to facilitate council proceedings. And that's not an easy task to accomplish. But importantly, I think that there could be a misunderstanding amongst within our community in believing that the mayor has some sort of an elevated role. The mayor does not have an elevated role. The mayor is one voice. We have a 7-person council. The mayor has one vote and is equal to all of the other votes on city council. The mayor has the privilege of marrying people should they want to get married. The mayor pro tem does not have that privilege. The mayor works in conjunction and kind of as a point person in relation to the other departments, is the first face for the community. However, the mayor does not have any additional council power than any other council member. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jane, same question.
Sure. I'm going to expand just a little bit because Sherry did a great job with that, and there's not a lot I can add. I agree. It's in our charter. The city of Chelsea has what's called a council manager form of government. So the council and the mayor work in tandem with a city manager. In our case, it's that role is filled by John Hannafin. And the council and the mayor, as Sherry noted, the mayor facilitates meetings and has the responsibility of being, representing the city on certain occasions, but has no additional power per se. It's a one vote of 7 on the council. But the council and the mayor together have the responsibility to make policy. And the policy is the part where we hear and respond to the citizens and look forward to the vision of what we want our city to look like, while the city manager takes over sort of the day-to-day operations of the community. That role lies with the power of the city manager, which is oversaw by the council and the mayor.
Okay, thank you for those answers. We'll move on to the next question. This time, Jane, you go first. Describe a situation or issue in Chelsea that you feel is a top priority to address.
Well, I will start right off the bat and start with something that I know is on a lot of people's minds right now, and that is the issue of civility and civil discourse. And I would like to let folks know that civil discourse, civic engagement, community input, these things to me are related and are very important. As long as I've been on council, and even prior to that in my professional life, I've done a lot of study, research, workshops, and even led groups on civil discourse in terms of how we communicate with one another. We don't necessarily or aren't even going to get to a place where folks all agree, and that's okay. But to reintroduce respectability, civility, a tone where we can listen and affirm that we have some understanding, that's a top priority to me, and I think to many in the community.
Thank you very much. And Sherry, the same question.
Yes, of course, Ms. Pacheco is absolutely spot on that issue. I would add that I think that this will begin 25 years in the field of behavioral health and helping couples talk nicely to each other. This begins with all of us making an agreement with ourselves that we are going to be respectful and have respectful interactions regardless of what our beliefs or differences may be. And that includes both face-to-face as well as in social media. If we can calm down the angry rhetoric and remember that we are all human beings and we are all traveling down the same river of life, then perhaps we can remember our humanity towards man. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Well, and woman, excuse me.
Go ahead. You've got a few seconds left.
No, I was just going to say our humanity towards one another, man to man, woman to woman, woman to man, man to woman, children to everyone.
Great. Okay, the third question, Sherry, you'll start with this one. How will you lead a very divided community forward, knowing that some won't like your leadership? And what have you to say to those who don't agree with the decisions you make?
Well, let me first say that the mayor cannot make a unilateral decision. It is the council as a whole that will make the decision. And the way that council arrives at a decision is through discussion. The role of a mayor will be to help perhaps lead the discussion, facilitate the discussion, but every voice on council has equal weight. And so again, this could be a bit of a misunderstanding, thinking that the mayor has a unique and unilateral leadership role that will set policy. Ms. Pacheco stated just a few minutes ago, the mayor does not unilaterally make any decisions. The council as a whole makes all of the decisions through consensus. Thank you.
Okay, and Jane, the same question.
So how to lead a divided community? Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to listen to your community, to engage with the community. The mayor, the council members, we are just representatives. We are the lucky ones that get to engage at coffee shops and soccer fields and congregations and take in the stories, the good, the bad, the suggestions, the criticisms. And I think in truly listening and acknowledging all of that, that's what we bring back to council. And Ms. Albertson's correct. I mean, we discuss that as a council, as representatives of the community, and then we vote on the best way forward.
Great. I appreciate all these thoughtful answers. These are things that I think are common themes that we all in town have talked about over and over. The fourth question in line here, Jane, you'll start with this one. Affordable housing is a concern for many individuals and families in Chelsea. How could our community increase the number of affordable homes so people who work in Chelsea could also afford to live in Chelsea?
Affordable housing, I want to start by answering, and Paul, am I correct? We have 2-minute answer?
Right, 2 minutes.
Okay, so I want to just start and just speak to the word affordable housing. That means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And in what the council has liked to say is we're looking at, diversity in housing, right? Housing that is affordable, yes, but that can be a spectrum of things. So how do we look toward increasing the workforce housing in our community? How do we look to lower maybe the bar of entry for our first responders, our teachers, our social workers, our folks that may not be able to afford $300,000-$400,000 homes? I think as a city council, through the master planning process, through the revised zoning ordinance, we're touching on those things by, again, listening to the needs of our community and responding with thoughtful solutions where we are hopefully able to plan for diversity in new developments in terms of home sizes and lot sizes and uses. And then also in terms of existing stock and property, we need to be creative in thinking about options for conversions. Recently, we added accessory dwelling units to some zoning areas in our downtown area, and it's the myriad of options that exist. We need to explore them, investigate them, fit them into our community somehow, and implement.
Thank you. And Sherry, same question.
Okay, thank you. So we have just completed an update of our master plan, our comprehensive plan, and have added a lot of important new elements to it. Excuse me, as Ms. Pacheco has touched on. We have added the permissions. These are permissions. Zoning ordinances is permissions. So we've added permissions to homeowners to add AUDs, except ancillary dwelling units, or ADUs, pardon, ancillary dwelling units. We have also written into the master plan the zoning. We've written zoning for tiny houses, clustered tiny homes. So that's in there also. So there are two. Right, those two things immediately are more diverse housing options. But importantly, the former Heritage Point, which is now referenced as Heritage Farms, has a new development organization. And I believe that they are referenced as the development agreement is with Westview LLC. Okay, they have petitioned through, I'll talk fast. They've petitioned through the Planning Commission to actually reduce the coverage, the structure coverage on the existing lots in order to start building smaller homes, single-story homes, so that there at significantly less of the large $200, $300, and $400 homes, because they had referenced the research which shows that there is a broader market now and appeal for small one-story ranch homes, and that is going to be a large portion of what is going into our community immediately. So we have now much more diversity in our housing stock. Thank you. Done.
Thanks. You're doing a great job keeping up with the timing.
Working it.
All right, Sherry's, we're going back and forth. So each of you gets to answer a question first. It'll be your turn on the fifth question here. The Chelsea City Council is a nonpartisan election. What will you do to make sure the council keeps its nonpartisan representation, keeping the best interest of the city and citizens first and foremost?
I have always said, and I will continue to say, that as a nonpartisan council, and that is section 3.1 of our charter, that we are nonpartisan and the entire community is one interest group. We are stewards of this community, and every person should feel and know that they have access to their local unit of government. And this is what I say to community members: our agenda is your agenda. We are here to serve you. You let us know what you want. We will keep the infrastructure going well. We will provide whatever best services we can provide. But if you do not provide input to us, we won't know what you want and what you need. And so I forgot the question, but let me say one more time, because I'm trying to talk fast. The community, I was on the Charter Commission when we wrote that we will remain a nonpartisan council. So how do we maintain that? By reminding all of ourselves that we don't have a special, none of us has a special interest group. There is only one group, and it's the entire community of Chelsea. I've always stood behind that because I helped to write that charter, and I am the one who put the ethics right in the front of the charter on how we would conduct business for the city of Chelsea. So I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jane?
Sure. If I can just reiterate, how do we keep the best interests of the city and the citizens in light? Is that the essence of the question? So the majority of what city council members do, public servants, city council, mayor, city manager, is the operation of the city. It's the non-sexy sort of administrative things. People are concerned about infrastructure, speeding, sidewalks, public utilities, water, housing, trails, schools, those types of things, arts and culture. None of those things are partisan necessarily. So by virtue of the fact that I'm listening to citizens and working on their behalf to take care of these sort of everyday business sort of issues, I believe that is putting the best interest of the city and the citizens at the forefront.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to question 6. And Jane, you go first on this. Again, these are 2 minutes, and you can use up the whole 2 minutes. I'm going to give you plenty of warning if you get close, so don't worry about that. The 6th question here: how will you ensure that the city is collaborating with other large organizations like the schools, the hospital, and other employers that directly impact the desirability of Chelsea?
Well, first of all, I think the city does a fantastic job of this and has for as long as I've been paying attention to this sort of thing as an adult, so to speak. It is, this community is a small community, as you all know, and we have fantastic organizations, world-class, national award-winning organizations. And part of that, I believe, is due to the fact that we collaborate incessantly. So how do I ensure that the city is collaborating? I just continue in a long-standing tradition of collaboration. As a personal tenet, I believe that we go faster, better, stronger together. That's what our family mantra is. And I believe that in business as well. And I believe that in public service. We need to collaborate. We need to listen to all the voices. And the best solutions are many times collaborative.
Okay, thank you. Sherry, same question. If at any
Sure.
point when we go through this, if you want me to repeat the question, I'm happy to do that.
But then we'd have to stop talking. Ms. Pacheco is very spot on when she says the foundation for this is always collaboration. Whenever I'm outside of Chelsea and tell people where I'm from, and Chelsea, and they say, "Oh, Chelsea, what a great community." My response is immediate and always the same. It's not an accident that Chelsea is a great place. And it is precisely because of the willingness of all of the individuals who step up and try to work to maintain that, from sounds and sights to hometown holidays, everything. Purple Rose Theater. None of these things would really be available to the residents of Chelsea, as well as anybody outside of Chelsea, if it weren't for the collaboration between all of these groups. And so the mayor, as well as city council members, are always out in the community listening to what people are saying and getting ideas on how to bring ideas back to council that we can work on. Palmer Commons is a good example. Community solar is another example. A lot of these things began at the grassroots community level. So listening to what our community has to say and what our community wants, that is how we maintain all relationships. Thank you.
Right. Okay, question number 7. And again, I'll remind you, all of these came in through the website anonymously, so we really don't know who sent them, but we've just taken the best of them and we're going through it here. Sherry, you answer this one first. Council members take an oath to follow the law. If you are elected, what steps will you take to ensure that anything you propose or vote for complies with state law, the city's charter and ordinances, and council rules?
Well, so that's part of policy and procedure. So one of the roles of our city manager is to provide a lot of that kind of guidance. First of all, we should all know what the Open Meetings Act is about. We should all read the rules of council and the behavior. We should all read the city charter. All of what you've just asked is all contained in those documents. And so in order to adhere to the rules and oaths of office, as well as legal stipulations, it's important to reference our own level of personal ethics and to make sure that we are putting community before self, and to not step outside of the lane, so to speak, to review appropriate documents, and then if we have ideas, bring them to the group as a whole, because typically it is council in the discussion that helps to lead and take an idea from the idea phase to the implementation phase. And we have guidance all along the way to make sure that we are careful. But at the beginning and end of every single day, personal ethics are required to fulfill the role of anyone who is sitting on city council, because it is community first and always community first. Thank you.
Jane, same question.
Sure. I mean, I think this is a fairly easy question. How do you take an oath to follow the law? How do you ensure that your proposals follow policy and procedure? As Sherry mentioned, we have hired a very competent professional city manager that reviews anything that comes through the council. We also have on retainer a city attorney and counsel available to us, as well as many, if it's beyond the scope of those two individuals and our city charter and our code of ethics, the city participates in organizations like the Michigan Municipal League and the Southeast Council of Governments, and a number of professional organizations that exist to offer advice and counsel on matters of that nature.
Okay. Again, I remind you, these questions came in, so I'm going to read them the way they're written. Jane, this next question, number 8, is what is your philosophy about the growth economically and residentially of Chelsea?
What is the philosophy of the growth of Chelsea?
What is your philosophy about the future growth economically and residentially of Chelsea?
And residentially. So my philosophy on growth of any kind is to have a plan for it. The last place I think I want to be personally or in part of an organization or a municipality is behind the 8 ball and reacting to something. So planned growth, using implements at our disposal, like the master plan process, the zoning ordinance revisions. These documents are proposed to be revised. I believe the master plan is every 5 years for a reason, because change happens, whether or not we like it. And we want to have a strong hand in what is happening to our community, which is why the city council for many years now has implemented a visioning. Actually, it's twice a year now. We have a visioning session that usually happens in February, where we lay out a strategic plan for this year, but we're also looking with many of our departments and longer term in terms of capital improvements and infrastructure and development and future land use. We're looking years ahead because we are hopefully being very thoughtful and mindful and reading everything that is available to us in terms of what might happen. We don't have a magic 8 ball, but we want to plan for the best set of circumstances for our community based on the vision that our community has for what we want to be and preserve and look like in the future.
And Sherry.
Would you please repeat the question, please?
Sure. What is your philosophy about the future growth economically and residentially of Chelsea?
Okay, so when I very first ran for council, the very first time, I ran first on the platform of green space, but then also I became very startlingly aware of the housing boom began, and everybody was developers were grabbing up all of the extra space all around us, and it was becoming very I was becoming very concerned. And so the first word that I would use to describe my philosophy of economic and other forms of growth is very carefully. And that is exactly what our comprehensive plan is about. It is the best one that's ever been written. It took more than 5 years to write it, but we have extra sections in it now that should have been added, but timing is everything. So now we have a really good plan for how Chelsea would like to see growth occur within the boundaries of Chelsea. But the boundary now is going to be pressing because development is beginning again. And as Ms. Pacheco has said, we have to become not just mindful, but we need to always be thinking strategically, meaning thinking ahead of the curve so that we can plan how we want to respond should a development or a developer approach our city on that side or on the other side. What will be our position before that happens? Thank you.
Great. I really like that you're so thoughtful about all these things. You've clearly put some time and effort into this, I'm guessing from your experiences on the city council and just living here in general. The next question, number 9 here, Sherry, you'll go first. What organizations do you belong to that are engaged in activities other than the city council business? And have you disclosed what those organizations are?
Well, all of my extracurricular organizations happen to be based on my professional work. They all are psychology and research based. I don't have time. I don't have time to join other forms because I'm working. And if I'm not working, then I'm working. If I'm not working there, I'm working here. So I only belong to professional organizations, not community-based organizations. And now this is, when I say that, that is separate from our council liaison appointments. So those are not organizational memberships. Those are professional from council to like me for the planning commission, Ms. Pacheco capped art. I was formerly the capped art. You know, if you're on council long enough, you're going to be assigned to almost every committee and commission that there is. So so I don't have membership other than professional memberships.
Okay, Jane, same question.
Well, I have a laundry list of organizations that I'm involved in. I did mention I have an almost 16-year-old and an 18-year-old, and we've lived here for 18 years now. So a lot of those organizations are directly related to being a parent and being involved in the community in that way. 4-H, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, sports. I was instrumental in starting the Mothers of Preschoolers group at the Methodist Church. Myself and another woman founded what is now the Material Girls Holiday Bazaar back in the day when it was just the Holiday Bazaar. I am and have been working with the schools with the District Wellness Coalition regarding youth mental health. And as that transitioned, I came on board with what is now the Seriously Youth Mental Health Coalition. I'm on the program team there. I was part of the Chelsea Community Kitchen, and by way of that, I had initiated a community breakfast called Yellow Door. I most recently, in the last year or so, came onto the board of an organization that has been around for about 20 years in the community called One World, One Family. This is a human rights advocacy organization that does programming in the community. As Sherry mentioned, our council committees are not necessarily organizations, but excuse me, I've been on a number of those, including, the healthy communities. At one point was part of the 5 Healthy Towns group. So lots of fingers and lots of pies at any given point. I think we do usually annually. I think we do a form that we list all of our organizations for potential conflict of interest, and everything has been made public. It's on my website.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I had to use that. It's
I told
okay if
you.
you go the whole 2 minutes.
I said I was involved in a lot of things.
Yeah. All right, question number 10, and Jane, you'll start on this one. What do you think can be done about traffic congestion on M52/Main Street?
What can be done about traffic congestion, M52/Main Street? Well, this is a perennial conversation, right? As I understand it, this predates me by decades probably. I think in my time on council, and I have been for a few years, I was on the transportation working committee, and I know this was addressed. I know that we get comments and suggestions and complaints about this regularly. There are a couple of things that we've looked at and the city continues to explore. We have somewhat of our hands are tied to a degree because M52 is a state highway. And though it runs through our community, the city of Chelsea does not have jurisdiction over that So anything that we're able to do, we work collaboratively with the state of Michigan. So in the past, some of the more successful things have been, curb bump outs and painted crosswalks and things of that nature. And we're constantly working with MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, to address some of those concerns. Other things that might be done, and I know have been discussed in the past, are sort of working with traffic routes and schools and busing and things like that.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Okay, so way back, there was an initiative to build what was referenced as a bypass off of M52 into Sylvan Township, with exiting out onto Brown Road. And the cost of that was so ginormous that it didn't really have staying power. And then there was another discussion about a bypass coming off of 52 going to the east toward Fletcher Road and then toward 94 that way. That also has private property involved. And so none of those are really viable. Our hands are tied when it comes to what we can do on Main Street. We call it Main Street, but it's really M52. There was a time in the way back when the village of Chelsea could have petitioned the state to have it decommissioned as a haul route to just on M52 without that haul designation, but that opportunity was missed. So what we can do, well, I don't know. I don't think there's much that we can do other than, and there are times when MDOT disregards the city of Chelsea's input. For example, when they increased the speed on Jackson Road, just west of what we call Main Street, they increased the speed from 25 to 45 miles an hour, and they didn't even inform us that they were going to do that. And then they said, oh, they would restore it back to a lower speed limit, but they haven't restored it. There is insufficient communication between MDOT and local units of government because they are a state level entity. So what can we do? Keep the speed limits low and traffic enforcement. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're doing great. That we're 10 questions done. We have 5 to go, and we've got time to do it, I think. So the next question, and we'll start with Sherry again. What do you see as viable options to develop the federal Screwworks property?
Well, that has been in development and out of development and in and out of development so many times. So I think that we have a wonderful economic and community developer in Ms. Julie Appel, and she does a really bang up job for beating the bushes to see what can be done. So that is, in fact, going to be the next major focus for development within the boundaries of Chelsea once the, I always forget the name of the development that's going in behind the clock tower, that is going forward. So once that gets going, there'll be a significant effort on the part of our administrative staff to start marketing that site vigorously. So it'll obviously be mixed use. It is restricted from residential because of some of the ground contamination, but so that's going to be the next one up. So pay attention because it's going to happen.
Right.
And Jane, the same question.
Yeah. So this question, I mean, in part, there are some facts, and Ms. Albertson, said that right now it's privately owned, and developers need to do their due diligence to see how and if they're able to make it a viable project on their own. It's been through a few different iterations in terms of proposals. I think, and this conversation has been happening for a long time too, in my opinion. And then the other fact is that there are restrictions in terms of the environmental and restricting building residential there. However, it's my opinion that I think that site is, one of a handful that would deserve some city joint venture partnership support. And I know we've had some of these conversations, and it doesn't just happen. You need to do marketing. You need to find the right partners, the right developers. But I would love to see sort of a mixed use development there that had the needs of the city and the residents and the very local community at heart, and that fit the neighborhood, because it's an extension. It sits in our downtown development district. It's an extension of our downtown, but it's also residential. So there are a lot of opportunities, let's say, for that parcel options. There will need to be creative and perseverant, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I just need one moment with Terrace. All right, sounds great. We're just trying to agree on the timing here. Question number 12, we'll start with Jane. What are the 3 most important issues going forward for the city, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I opened the conversation with the fact that I think we need a return to civility. I think that the incoming council will be able to role model and successfully set some leadership goals for how to have civil discourse. And if that includes, doing some public education and learning together, we may need to revisit that. So that would be one priority. Other important issues, as I hope most folks know, we have just concluded an operational audit of our police department. It is on the current agenda for next week's city council meeting to set a work session to discuss that report and what we might be able to do to continue to improve our community policing in the community. So that would be a second sort of priority issue. And I think we talked about housing, and housing continues to be a real challenge in our community. So I think that would be a third thing that needs careful consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. And Sherry, the same question. What are your 3 most important issues going forward for the city?
Sure. So the top priority, of course, is the return to civility. The second one is to find some way to partner with our schools in order to address the cultural challenges that exist within our schools, the student-to-student challenges. There is an absence of, there is a disconnect within the schools in relation to the understanding of different cultures and just differences. There was a time when the city had a liaison to the school board, and then the school board had a liaison to the city council. Somehow that's evaporated. I think we should re-implement that. So that's number 2. Number 3 is to continue with our redevelopment projects, because every time we are successful with a redevelopment project, we restore the missing pieces of our community. We integrate all of our neighborhoods. We return fallow areas, vacant areas to our tax rolls. And the more we return these areas to our tax rolls, the more potential there is for us to do more within our community without having to add any additional tax burden to our citizens. So that would kind of be my order.
Great, thank you. One pause again. All right. We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to move on to some closing statements. Sherry, what experience do you have with reading, formulating, and/or working with a complex budget?
Well, I have many years of working with the city's complex budget, and every year it gets a bit more complex. So is that what the question is? My experience with reading complex budgets? Well, okay, so you get the budget out and you get a ruler and you go line by line by line, and you look at things that jump out at you that are different from the previous years. And then you make notes to ask questions about those. And then we have 2 work sessions in May to discuss, for all of us to discuss what our questions are and to see if we want to modify the budget in any kind of way. And then we also open these work sessions to the public for their input and to all of the other organizations in the city of Chelsea that we might give funding to. Because if we're going to provide funding to any given entity, then they have to come before us with their budget. And then we look at our budget and see how can we move things around to accommodate that. That's the bit of where our agenda is your agenda. So it is, it can become interesting if you like to read these things. I was the person who used to read the dictionary, so reading the budget is not boring to me. So I don't know if that's, makes me a nerd, but I think it's kind of sexy in this world now to be a nerd. So I look forward to our budgeting process every year. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jane?
So yeah, my experience reading a municipal budget is limited to the 8 years that I've been on city council. However, prior to that, I had 10 or so years in commercial real estate. So I knew my way around a pro forma, so to speak. I can read some numbers. However, that said, the way that I've sort of learned to read this budget is luckily our clerk Laura Kaiser is able to give us hard copies and nice binders. And year to year, we go through line by line and make our comments and notes. And each year I take, the previous years and compare them really to what's changing, why is it changing, how are we planning for, forward thinking. My one desire for the budget process, and it is very complicated. The budget is complicated and it is important. It's probably the most important thing that council members are responsible for. And I would love to see the community at large be more involved in the budget process. Our fiscal year ends in the end of June. So like Ms. Albertson said, we start our budget, or the city staff actually starts way earlier than the council gets a draft in end of April, beginning of May. We have some work sessions. At that point, the staff has been working on this budget for months. And if the citizens, the community, the organizations, our partners are to be involved in budgeting in terms of line items or partnerships, those things need to happen well before May. So I would love for us to be have more input. We've tried to have some mid-year review sessions. We may want to look at a mid-year budget session as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to move on now to some closing statements from each of you, with some thought from you about why is it exactly that you want to be mayor of the city of Chelsea. And we'll start with Jane.
So
2 minutes.
2 minutes also, Paul, 2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay, so I can't say I have enjoyed every minute of the last 8 years of council, right? It is a job. And it is not for the faint-hearted. But one of the things that I love about it is I get to hear from so many different people across the board. I get to hear and talk to our senior population. I get to hear and speak with our youth, our students, our missing middle, our employers, our employees, our teachers, all sorts of people. And they all have different things to say about the community, but what they have in common in all of those comments is they want to make the community a better place. And they have an idea on how we could do that together, and they're eager to share their ideas. So for me, mayor is, let's just say it's a council member, that facilitates meetings, right? So it's a council member plus. And I don't know what exactly that looks like for me, because I haven't been there, but I know that being a council member and listening and hearing from people about how excited they are to make our community better, that encourages me, it gives me hope, and it inspires me to help make those things happen.
Right. Go ahead. Sherry?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. So, so I have devoted my life to service. The work that I do professionally is service. And now it has extended to service to the city of Chelsea in the form of being a city council member, and then now serving the community as the mayor. So service to my community has always been of utmost importance, and service to people. One of the things that I said at the evening for civil discourse on Tuesday evening was the importance of listening to the individual, because the world is comprised of individuals, and the individual voice is the voice that carries the most importance. And it does not matter who the individual is. It matters that I'm able to hear their voice and understand what they're saying to me and what they want, and how I can be of aid to help them accomplish that. So being on city council has been, in addition to my other professional work, it has been some of the most satisfying work I've ever been able to do. So service, that's what it's about for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I've got a couple of minutes here. I got a couple of quick comments. In closing, I would like again to thank the candidates for being willing to serve in this role as the mayor of Chelsea. As I keep saying, this is not a job for the faint of heart nor the casual volunteer, but rather it is a job for skilled, thoughtful people who care about this city. Once again, also thanks to all of you who took time from your day to attend, to zoom in here. And I liked it better in person, but this is better than nothing, I think. Finally, you know, it is the good fortune of everyone here that we live in a free society where each adult citizen has the right, and I personally would say the duty, to participate in our democratic processes. Please consider what you have heard and seen here this evening, and I urge you to vote for the candidate of your choice on Election Day. Good evening to all of you. I hope you stay safe and take care of those around you. Thank you. We'll be back in a few minutes for the next round with the city council candidates.
The first message was moment.
if we could, before we get started, if we could just do a quick sound check. So I'll read your name and just give me an okie dokie. Phil Sawicki? You're muted. Tony Iannelli?
Here.
Stephen Wright?
Yes, I'm here.
Kate Huron?
I am here, and I'm also Christine. Sorry, my nickname is what's up on the screen. Thank you so much.
And Mr., is it Kaiser or Kaiser?
Kaiser.
Mr. Kaiser. Thank you.
Let's move this way.
Mr. Roddick, can you give us a quick sound check?
Yes. Hello, Bill
Perfect.
Roddick here.
Thank you. Mr. Sawicki, we're going to try again. You might have to turn the volume down on your speaker because you're given some feedback when you speak. Go ahead, Mr. Sawicki.
Yes, hello.
Okay, that's a little better. Thank you.
That's our daughter. You want to go call her? I don't know how to shut my notifications off. Reagan goes rude.
Because we're not gonna be able to hear the questions. He's gonna have to have the volume up a little
So
bit.
we are gonna.
Okay, unfortunately, I've gone through about 3,000 different Zoom meetings, and I can tell somebody whose microphone's active has another Zoom user in the room, and that's causing feedback. So I'm not going to tell you to have another person in the room or not. So I'm just moderating the Zoom portion, but your microphone's not going to come through if you have another person trying to use Zoom while you're using Zoom. You're going to get feedback like we keep hearing.
So John, are we all set?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Well, if you listen to the mayoral forum, you probably heard a lot of what I'm going to say now anyway, but I'm going to roll through it and then we'll get this on the show, on the road here. Welcome everyone to the 2021 Chelsea City Council Candidates Forum. I'm Paul Schisler. I own a business here in Chelsea. I've lived in the area for about 22 years now. I used to work here for many years, way back in the day, as they say. I have served on the Chelsea Area Chamber of Commerce Board for 7 years in the past, including 1 year as president. But I live in Lima Township now. I don't vote for city council members, so I have a fairly neutral position in this matter. It's my privilege to be here and guide us through this evening's event. First of all, I'd like to thank the candidates for being willing to serve on the role in the Chelsea City Council. As I've droned on and on for years now, it is not a job for the faint of heart or a casual volunteer. It's for thoughtful, intelligent, caring people who care about this city, the large, well-trained team that keeps it operating at such a high level, our families, businesses, schools, parks and recreation, our community in general. I contend that people want to be on the city council out of a devotion and an affection for this beautiful city. Since at a couple dollars a meeting, I don't think any of you are going to do this for the money. My thanks also goes to those of you who took time from your day to log in and learn more about these candidates who are competing for the 3 available seats. I also note that this forum, like many of these, has been brought to you by the Chelsea Area Chamber of Commerce. Assisting me on this, as well as the earlier one, is Terrace Aarons. I think you can now get your hand over. Yeah, he's over there waving at you. He's helping me out with the timing charts, and if I get screwed up or if we switch some of the questions around, he'll be guiding me in my ear on the side here. I also want to thank his administrative assistant, Denise Coulieri, who does a lot of work on these activities for the chamber, as well as the chamber board and the chamber ambassadors. So I'll be asking the candidates as many questions as time allows. The questions came to the chamber anonymously through the website. There were way too many to ask them all, and many were duplications. So we included the ones most relevant to this election and did not choose the ones which were personal regarding any given candidate in this election. One last comment, and then we'll get started. For those of you who may not be familiar with the role of council members, I would refer you to the City of Chelsea website and recommend that you read about the council, peruse some of the agendas and minutes in previous meetings, as well as watch some of the videos. The city council meetings are always videotaped and they're available. I believe it's channel 18 is the local public channel. To make this even more convenient, there's a link right on the city's website to track that down. So moving on, I'd like each of the candidates to introduce themselves and make their opening statements, which are limited to 3 minutes. I think if you were watching earlier, I've got some signs that Paris made me. So 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then time out. So if you talk too much, we're gonna, ask you to stop. 3 minutes apiece. We're gonna do this in alphabetical order. So we're gonna start with Tony Iannelli. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chamber, for hosting this great event. Thank you, fellow candidates. And thank you, Chelsea community, for attending tonight and paying attention to your city. If you don't know me, I have been on council for 4 years. I'm running for my 2nd term. I have been a resident of Washtenaw County for most of my life. My parents actually moved to the United States in the late 60s with the intent to give their children the hopes of the American dream. I was the first member of my family to attend university. I attended the Western Michigan University College of Engineering and got my summer internship with a Chelsea company called Bookcrafters, and then was fortunate enough to come back a year later to be offered full-time employment. It was there that I met the love of my life, who became my wife, Dawn, and her 2 children, Jason and Jennifer. And then our family expanded later in the early 2000s with the addition of our 2 sons, Jaron and Finnegan. My youngest, who is about to become a senior, who is now a senior at CHS, just started. During my time on council, I've served on the Western Washtenaw Recycling Authority. I'm currently the chairman. Also served on Seriously, the Chelsea Sustainability Committee, and the Human Rights Commission. During my term, Some of the great things that we've done as a council, I certainly can't take credit for these all my own, but we did adopt the Chelsea Master Plan. We pulled off an annexing agreement with Lima Township for a future development on the west end of town, or east end of town, sorry. We also purchased property adjacent to the city limits for a future park and green space and possibly even a community center. We witnessed the revitalization of the blighted Mac building, which is now our agricultural farm stop. We adopted the new zoning ordinance to hopefully help us with our affordable housing issues. And most recently, the acquisition of the rights to Old US 12 from the county. Earlier in the mayoral session, they were talking about the Main Street, M52. We had a similar issue with Old US 12, that was under the jurisdiction of the county. And now the city of Chelsea will maintain that road and any traffic on that. Also, the approval of the B2B trail connector right through the city. I'm running for re-election because I love this community just as much as most of you do. It has great people, businesses, and city management. And I want to represent the residents of the city in their best interests as we go into the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. And next, David Kaiser. Looks like you're muted. John, do we need an assist? There we go. Go ahead, David.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Dave Kaiser. I would like to thank the Chamber for this opportunity and share a little bit about myself and some thoughts with you. This is my first Zoom meeting, so please bear with me. I don't know too much about these kind of things. So I have lived in and been in this community all my life. I went to school here. And when I had children of my own, I knew this would be a great place for them as well. The school system and the welcoming nature of the people that live here are just a couple of things that influenced my desire to stay in this community. I've been employed by Chelsea Lumber Company for almost 25 years now. And before that, I worked for other local businesses such as Jiffy Mixes and Dana Corporation. I also worked for the school system as a bus driver for 7 years, following in my parents' footsteps where they drove both of them for over 30 years. I've also been very involved in coaching youth sports such as junior high, now middle school wrestling, and travel baseball. I've watched our village thrive and grow into a city while still maintaining its small town appeal, a place where everyone is welcome to enjoy the events and amenities that Chelsea has to offer. I believe it is easier to build a foundation on mutual respect when you have your basic needs taken care of. If you let those needs slip away, the foundation begins to fall apart. Unfortunately, some of the recent events that have occurred in our community have led me to my decision to run for city council. I feel that disagreements are not what people need in a small town. We need to remember that we are all neighbors and don't want our city to lose sight of the tranquil and safe city I remember. As a representative of Chelsea, I plan to keep our government tight and to do what is needed to keep peace and safety amongst our citizens. No more, no less. So let's get back to business. I look forward to meeting many of you in person in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, Christine Mihiran.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here this evening for our own event of civil discourse. I've been a resident of Washtenaw County for 32 years. I have lived in different places in Washtenaw County, but my home professionally is Eastern Michigan University. And my home is also not only Eastern Michigan University, where I teach as a professor of philosophy and have been an associate dean, my heart is also where my community is and where the public good is. I have a complicated personal identity as both a public servant and as an academic professional. As a public servant, when I lived in Dexter Township for 12 years, I was a Dexter Township planning commissioner. And during that period of time, I also was a liaison to Dexter Township on the part of the Huron River Watershed Council, which is also a very important collaborative partner for the city of Chelsea. And so during that time, I earned a master planner's certificate and a certificate from Michigan Lakes and Streams. I moved to Chelsea in 2018. I became more and more impressed with the services offered by Chelsea and my real sense of Chelsea being much bigger than it is, because there are so many citizens with their hands on deck in this city. And it's just extraordinary to me. And I admit, as a consumer, I have adored all of Chelsea's arts and entertainment and beautiful entrepreneurial activities, but I never rest easy with just enjoying and consuming things. I feel like I need to give back as well. So the minute I hit town, I was appointed to the Chelsea Parks and Recreation Commission, and I was also appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because I wanted to use my skills on behalf of the city. My heart is committed to the public good. My chosen families are my EMU colleagues and my students. The people of Chelsea has become my chosen family, and of course, my friends. So I'm really happy to be heard this evening, and I look forward to sharing more of my views. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, Bill Ruddick.
Hello, I am Bill Ruddick, and I would like to thank the Chamber for pulling this forum together. And I really appreciate the work of the Chamber, which has helped create and maintain a vibrant business community in Chelsea. And I think part of our charm definitely falls in that realm. Let me begin with a simple statement. I love Chelsea. It is for this reason that I am running. That all other reasons are a corollary to that simple statement. Chelsea, with its vibrant downtown, its beautiful library and all the services provided by the library, the Purple Rose Theater, its wonderful, diverse restaurants, its many active churches, its active, socially driven youth, its community that has embraced both Laura and myself, have all meant that the 3 years that we have lived here have been rich and meaningful. Now, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, not unlike Chelsea at all, where my paternal grandparents were both village clerk and town clerk. My uncle was the mayor. My paternal grandfather was on the Assessment Board of Appeals. In other words, I was steeped in what it means to be a community of service. I have served on every church board that I've been a member of since the age of 14. I have served on the Okemos Community or the Okemos School Board. Professionally, I'm a certified project manager, and I've implemented large-scale accounting systems for the likes of the state of Michigan. I did that twice, and also top-tier universities. The truth is that this guides all that I do, is that we get things done when we work together. And as a single council member, we really have very little control over anything. It's only through working together with other council members that we can accomplish anything. I also want to point out that I feel very strongly about the importance of integrity. I have had personal and professional tough decisions which have been costly to me personally. But I could sleep at night and knowing that the communities I was serving were better for what I decided. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, Phil Sawicki. And you are muted, Phil. We're working on that technical difficulty right now. Bear with us. There we go.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity to present myself to the voters of Chelsea. To the rest of the audience, thank you for attending. Let me start by saying I'm not a politician. This won't be one of those polished speeches you normally hear this time of year. This is just my story, and I appreciate being able to share it with you. I'm a Michigan native, born and raised in Detroit. Following high school, I attended NMU in Marquette. I met and married my college sweetheart and got my bachelor's degree in law enforcement. After 4 winters in the UP, we were ready for a change. Folks said California is the place you ought to be, so we moved to California. We spent the 80s starting a family and getting my career off the ground. My son was born in 1986. By the late 1980s, my parents were stuffing cards and letters with Detroit area want ads urging us to come back home. We did return to Michigan in 1991 to raise our son among his extended family. I was working at the Ann Arbor Police Department the first time we visited Chelsea. Main Street was a collection of small businesses offering a variety of goods and services, and every storefront was occupied. The neighborhoods were full of well-kept homes with attractive yards, and Chelsea schools had a good reputation. Everything was clean and well-maintained. I was thoroughly impressed. Chelsea was everything we were looking for, so we bought a house in town to make this our forever home. For 30 years, Chelsea's been a wonderful place to live and raise a family. I retired in 2014 and stayed right here. Chelsea's my whole world now, and I love it here. I spend weeks traveling, never going east of Freer or west of Wilkinson. I walk my dog Leo around town every single day. We pass friendly, polite people who smile, say hello, and just appear happy to be here. I'd also like to mention I have a master's degree in public administration, which is a study of the various functions of government, and I'm ready to put it into practice. So that's me in a nutshell. If you think I can be an asset to this community, I'm ready to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And finally, we have Stephen Wright. And you are also muted.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Steve Wright, and we live just off of Main Street in the downtown area. For those of you that aren't aware, I'm the dinosaur guy that on South Street that's responsible for all the dinosaur nests and babies every spring and other seasonal displays. My wife, Dale, and I moved to Chelsea in the summer of 1977 when we first came to Michigan. Me to take academic position at the University of Michigan, and Dale to attend graduate school at MSU. Chelsea was a good intermediate point between the two locations, based on recommendations from people who were more familiar with the area than us. In the subsequent 44 plus years that we've lived here, we have become quite integrated into the Chelsea community. Although my position at the University of Michigan was very time demanding, Dale spent 12 years on the Chelsea School Board and also has served in a number of volunteer positions. I was able to make time for several community activities, most of which were associated with our two sons who grew up in the area, and as well as several positions that I had appointed by either the village or later on the city. Chief among them was my service as the chair of what was referred to as the Water Study Committee that was formed around the beginning of 2007 largely in response to the problems that were associated with the operation of the, at that time, new water treatment plant. And there was also a lawsuit that was filed around the same point in time as a result of the inability of the water system to provide an adequate water supply. Our Citizens Committee consisted of 7 Chelsea citizens that identified the problems that existed and came up with recommendations that were adequate to solve the problems that were existing at that time and save the city a lot of money at the same time. I've done similar service for other communities, including Ann Arbor, Dearborn, and Detroit. And my time is up, so I'll stop at this point.
Well, thanks everybody for those thoughtful and rather thorough introductions. I feel like I found out a great deal about each and every one of you and your association with our city. We have a bunch of questions. I'm sure we're not going to get through them all since we have so many people running for these positions, but we're going to rotate through. First time through, we'll go in the same order that we just did. The next time we'll start with David, the third question with Christine, the fourth, and we'll roll through it like that so everybody gets a chance to answer the question first. So starting with Tony, the first question is, and I'm going to edit this a little. We have way too many questions, and I want to get ones that will be the most impactful that we can manage, I think. So Tony, what would you describe a situation or issue in Chelsea that you feel is a top priority to address? And you have 2 minutes and you're muted.
Thank you. Top priority, I mean, there are multiple priorities that the city faces. I think one of our top priorities needs to be responsible growth. The city needs more housing. There's clearly a need for more housing and how to get that housing. We have limited space to expand. We need to explore avenues of expanding the city through annexing, with working together with the neighboring townships. And of course, notwithstanding, obviously a topic of discussion as far as a top priority within the city is civility. Civility is very important. Civility means talking to each other, understanding each other, making time to listen to each other and offer consideration for other ideas that don't align with your own. This is important. Our current society in general, not just in town, it's nationwide. We're divided on various topics. I'm not going to go into each and every one. Some of them, the topics that we're concerned with as city council are the topics that concern the city and the city business. City business, by and large, involves maintaining our roads, expanding our green space, infrastructure, equipment, purchases, land use, zoning, permits, those types of things. 95% of the time, we vote 7-0 as far as passing policy. Things we disagree on are always going to be there. It doesn't mean we can't be civil with one another.
Okay, and next is David.
Hey, am I there? You got me?
Yeah.
Hello, okay. Mine's gonna be pretty short and sweet here. My priority is law enforcement. I think law enforcement is what it takes to keep this city safe and a desirable place to live. The lack of support for law enforcement and first responders has led us to a toxic situation. This is concerning for me, and I believe a large part of our community. I feel we have wasted money on this issue, and it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Christine.
Yes. First of all, since being here and serving as I have been, I've seen how important careful planning and balancing of our resources, our spaces, and our community development is. And I'm fully thrown myself behind the new master plan and the updated Board of Appeal zoning ordinances. And my particular interest in all of that is that Chelsea is growing rapidly. And so I'm very interested in reigniting liaison work, collaboration with the Huron River Watershed Council, with conservation groups, with groups that are associated with the B2B trail development, because I think Chelsea citizens deserve space, green space, recreational space, conserved space, and community space. And I'm really very excited to be voted into city council to be involved in the operational aspects of all of that. I also am a strong advocate of a community policing model in this town that could be focused on de-escalation of conflict, accountability and transparency and enforcement, and collaboration with care workers such as mental health, domestic violence intervention, and substance abuse disorder clinicians. I think our community deserves a caring and compassionate community policing model. I attended the Saline Police Department strategic planning, mission and vision and goals, and was very impressed. And I am sure that we could get the input and consensus of Chelsea citizens to work with our police department and the city council in terms of strategic planning. I really believe in goals and objectives, which have to come out of a strategic planning process that would be consensual. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, Bill Reddick.
Yes, this is one of those areas where, again, if you think about it, as a council member, none of us can walk in there and say, this is our top priority. None of us will have that authority as a council member. What we can walk into is listen and understand what our citizens think are their top priorities, and then as a council, work towards strategies to address those concerns. And that would be my top priority, would be to listen to our citizens and then work with other council members and the administration to make those a reality. It's a pretty simple formula, but that's it. I will also say that, I think our current council has really tried very hard to listen to the community. They've had multiple listening sessions around this issue of policing. And I do believe that they have been moving in the right direction in terms of moving towards a community policing. That's an example of listening to the community, setting a priority, and doing something about it. It takes time, but I really appreciate what the council is attempting to do. And I would intend to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And next up is Phil.
Thank you. I do agree with Dave Kaiser that my top priority will be restoring respect for law enforcement. I think the council has taken an adversarial position with regard to our police, and that position needs to be reevaluated. My second priority would be maintaining the character of Chelsea. we'll be doing a lot of growth and making decisions about how we want to change the community. And regardless of what route we take, I believe the most important thing will be to maintain the small town friendly atmosphere we currently enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Stephen Wright.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the introduction, we live very close to the Main Street, just off downtown. And as such, we're actually close enough to observe the Main Street traffic then over the course of the day whenever I happen to be around home there. I have noticed over the last few years that the amount of traffic on Main Street has been increasing quite significantly, and that there are certain times of the day where it's very difficult to move traffic through the downtown area in a timely fashion. As Sherry Albertson spoke earlier during the mayoral discussion, then there's a limited amount of things that we can as a city do, but I believe that there needs to be some investigation to determine whether or not there's a better way of working with the state in order to be able to improve the traffic flow through our town. Some of the options that were available in the past are no longer open probably, and so some kind of creative approach to this issue is going to have to be taken, because this is a problem that's going to continue to grow in the future.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. And this time we'll start with David. And the question is, affordable housing is a concern for many individuals and families in Chelsea. How could our community increase the number of affordable homes so people who work in Chelsea could also afford to live in Chelsea?
Okay, you're in now. Affordable housing. Everyone knows that developers put their own price point on their housing. No local unit of government can interfere. So in order to afford housing, to sponsor affordable housing, we would have to subsidize. And in order to subsidize, we would need to employ a housing authority, which means raising your taxes. And I don't think any of us want that. Thank you.
Okay, and next, Christine.
Yes, I think that affordable housing is something that I think is currently recently being addressed by City Council. The key to affordable housing actually is the getting baked in to your master plan and your zoning ordinances, a robust description and regulations and permissions for mixed use development. And so when I think of affordable housing, I think of mixed use development. How well are we aiming at the vision and the ideal of more mixed use development? This is all comes with the package also of how commercial buildings are developed or renovated, how parking can become parking for residents in those mixed use developments, how parking can be placed to the back of mixed use developments. And so I think the onus really lies on this already very exciting collaboration that always goes on between City Council and its Planning Commission and its zoning board, but also with entities like Downtown Development Authority, which does have input from the point of view of marketing and making the notion of mixed-use developments an appealing feature to the people of Chelsea. So yes, although I know the debate on affordable housing has had to do with accessory to homes, I think it's a much more important structural issue that can make the city very exciting and vital, and also inclusive, which inclusive of all kinds of citizens here in Chelsea.
Thank you. And next up is Bill Ruddick.
Thank you. I'm going to agree entirely with Kate on the idea that it's really through the master plan and the zoning and the variances that are offered from the city. And also there are lots of ways. In fact, one of the most recent developments that is going to happen is converting an old plant into apartments, which should be somewhat affordable. That's all happening with the help of the city. So we can leverage that without taking taxpayer dollars. So I very much feel that we need in this community the ability for the people who work and support us in our restaurants, at the Jiffy Mix plant. They need to live here. They need to be part of our community. They don't need to be driving, from 15 to 100 miles away because that's where they can afford a house. And that's what I would be very supportive of. And I agree also with Kate in the idea that the DDA, I think, can play a role in helping us make that happen. They're the ones that are struggling right now. We have downtown businesses closing at 2 because they can't get people living close enough that can work for them. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Phil.
Thank you. Thank you. When I think of affordable housing, I think of 2 categories. Number one, what it costs builders to build houses. The cost of land is not going down. The cost of materials is skyrocketing, and builders have to make a living. They have to make a profit. Based on that, our ability to create affordable housing is somewhat limited. The only alternative to what builders have to pay and what they have to earn is intervention of government. Intervention of government can take a lot of different, it can be achieved in a couple of different ways. Number one, it can be tax breaks, or it can be subsidizing the housing. As mentioned, I don't think anybody wants to cut into the tax base, nor do they want to increase our taxes. So the market for housing is going to be what it is. It's going to be the cost of housing plus profit equals the price point. Thank you.
And finally, on this question, Stephen Wright.
With the recent zoning ordinance review and modifications, there have been some opportunities presented with regards to attempts to provide more affordable housing within the city. I refer specifically to the situation where on individual lots, the ability to add some accessory housing has been made available through the changes in the zoning ordinance. Some people think that that didn't go far enough, and there's reason to say that maybe it ought to be looked at again. But there are certainly opportunities that can be provided within the framework of things that the city can do to provide some more housing opportunities to the city that would fall in the range of affordable. I'll stop at that point.
Great, thanks. And Tony, I almost forgot you, but I didn't. So you finish up on that question.
Thank you. Yes, affordable housing is an ongoing topic, not just in Chelsea, it's nationwide. There's a shortage of affordable housing all over the place. And in communities like Chelsea, which are highly desirable places to live, naturally, because of that, because it's a highly desirable place, inventories are low, therefore supply and demand pushes your prices up. What we've done as council is attack this problem because it's been ongoing. We created a housing committee that did some surveying and collected some data about housing to ensure that, to prove the fact that Chelsea is not necessarily affordable for those that work here, which is in some ways unfair. The people that work here to help build this community and make it great and love it just as much as we do can't live here because they don't earn enough to actually afford it. One of the things that we've done as council is work together with developers as they are presenting us with plans. For example, the renovation of the Rockwell building that's currently going to get underway soon, converting that into apartments instead of $500,000 luxury condos is one of those steps where city has worked with the developers. The Wolf development on Freer and the old US 12, looking at their mixed use of having both small as well as large houses. So we have a mixture and diversity of housing within the city limits. I think that's one of the things that we need to work on, and I think we can do without having to subsidize it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, we're moving on to the next question, and Christine will answer this one first. What experience do you have with formulating and implementing policies?
I have a good well of experience formulating and implementing policies. I'm going to go back to my career at Eastern Michigan University. Been there, still is there for 32 years. About 40% of my career at Eastern Michigan University has been in administrative positions, both as department head, also serving the president and the provost on commissions that have to do with human rights and sexual violence assault. And also as associate dean of the largest college on the entire campus, the College of Arts and Sciences, where I was part of a team implementing and writing and developing policies that governed budget and governed policies related to students and faculty. Externally to that, of course, I've served on the Dexter Township Planning Commission, and I'm currently, we worked pretty hard to completely rewrite the bylaws for the commission and to rewrite in those bylaws our relationship to the Dexter supervisors. So I like policy. It's a guideline. Policies and procedures are ways in which we conduct a democratic and civil environment between governance and citizens and civic organizations as well. So that's what I can think of right now in the time I have left.
Thank you very much. And next up on that question is Bill Reddick.
And just to clarify, is what is each of our experience relative to policy creation? Is that?
Yeah, right. Formulating and implementing policies.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm in the middle of rewriting a policy right now with the church that I work for, the Chelsea First United Methodist Church. I can't go into any of the details of that, but I do it all the time. I have been involved in policy writing for churches, both personnel, policy writing for the financial administration, how it's going to be managed and who's going to have what checks and balances and controls. So I'm very familiar with writing policy and implementing it. I will say it's a good question because that's what the council does. It sets the policies under which the city will operate. We need to use policy, though, as a way of guiding our government to do what we want it to do, as opposed to we're setting up policy to prevent this and prevent that and prevent, which is okay, that needs to be done, but we want to have policy be the implementation of our vision versus roadblocks to getting there. And if we have policy that is a roadblock, we should address it and change it. With that, I'll let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Phil.
Thank you. Like I said in my opening, my entire career was spent as a cop on the street. Working in uniform, working with the public, I had no role in formulating policy. However, any police department relies on the cop on the street to implement the policies that come from above. So my entire career was spent implementing policies that were created by others to the best of my ability and trying to make them into a practical practice that could take place on the street and convince the public to go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, same question.
Yes, there's several different things that I could point to. Probably the one most significant one outside of my university activities involves the time that I've spent on the Huron River Watershed Council. I was a member of the Huron River Watershed Council since 1979, first as a representative for Washtenaw County, and then ultimately after the city of Chelsea joined, then I became a representative for the city and currently serve in that position. I've been on the executive committee of the Watershed Council most of the years between 1979 and present time. In one of the really interesting policy decisions that we faced was in the early 90s, where a decision had to be made about whether we're going to go big or go home. In other words, we want to get more funding through grants and other external funding and hire the people to support those activities. That was the route taken, and it was successfully implemented. At the university, I was a member of a leadership team at the Graham Environmental Sustainability Institute in the early stages of its life, and we had to develop all the policy that basically dictated educational efforts, outreach efforts, and other activities associated with that. I could mention a number of other things, but I think I'm about out of time here, so I'll go ahead and stop.
Thank you, Stephen. And next up is Tony.
Thank you. Most of my experience actually in terms of policy has been with reviewing policy and interpreting policy. Oftentimes these are policies have been written sometime in the past and sometimes don't always apply to current situations. And so it's important to review policy. Naturally on city council, our guiding policy is our city charter. And it is important for every member of council to review that and understand it. And if there's something in there that they don't understand, to question that and get a better understanding of it. Formulating policy, we're always changing, things change, new policies need to be written for those changes. That's what city council does, but we do it collaboratively and working together. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tony. And then finally on that question, David.
Okay, honestly, I have not really worked with any policy creating. I have worked with families and kids while coaching and set up, game plans and things like that. But policy has a lot to do with common sense and listening to people and what people want, and then setting up the policies needed and implementing them as needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do one more question here. And since we got started a little bit late, I'm hoping, John, we can run over maybe till 8 or 10 after and get this done. So that's what I'm shooting for here. So the next question is, and we'll be starting with Bill on this one. So it's a statement and then a question, I guess. There are strong opinions and desires among Chelsea residents. How will you help guide and ensure the council stays focused on the community and the city of Chelsea itself, rather than become overcome with national political narratives? And we'll start with Bill.
I think that first of all, being a council, I would really expect the rest of the council to listen to, and all of us listen to the community. And, if a community member comes in and is uncivil, they're trying to get something off their chest, that's okay. What we have to be on council is modeling that we heard this person, we don't like the delivery, but we heard them. And we're going to take that into consideration on how we formulate a solution. But again, we model that by our dialogue. And I would also look to whoever the mayor is, to make sure that the council has adequate time to discuss issues. And the focus of our issues should be, how do we address the concerns of our citizens? And we do have recently issues that are of a national nature that have been hitting our school district. I think that the board is doing a very good job of trying to address those concerns, but we really just need to listen, do what's right for the community, and act like the leaders that we're meant to be, as opposed to angry citizens. I guess that's all I can say in terms of how I would do it.
Thanks, Bill. Next up is Phil.
Thank you. I've always believed that government was intended to be a neutral body whose function was to deliver services. My belief is that people shouldn't even know what the personal views are of the people on council, that their only purpose is to deliver the services that are identified by the citizens in the community. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And next up is Stephen.
Hopefully, we as a council are able to talk to each other and resolve our internal differences. We also will need to remember that people who are requesting things of the council don't always know what the council can and cannot do, and so that there are always constraints on the kinds of things that can actually be delivered. We need to, whenever we get in that kind of situation, remain respectful of the people who make the requests, but understand that there are limits, and try and communicate that information directly to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And Tony, you're up next.
I think it's absolutely imperative that city council members should be focused on the needs of their community. It's that community that votes for us. It's that community that chooses who they want to represent them in the city government to make the decisions that will affect them ultimately as residents of the city. Focus on that. I think it's important to listen to the community, because after all, that's who we work for. I don't do this job as you know, for notoriety, or certainly not for money. It's because I feel I want to give something back to the community that I love living in so much. And that's, I believe everybody that's here tonight feels that same way. It is driven by the community, and it is what our focus needs to be, representing the people of Chelsea.
Thank you, Tony. And next up is David.
We're working the bugs out of this Zoom thing.
You're doing great.
I will go into this position knowing that not everyone will agree with all of my decisions. But I believe my decisions will be made to keep our city safe for our citizens and desirable for those visiting our city. I believe we all need to listen, think before we speak, and respect others' opinions in order to carry on a civil conversation in the hope that it would result in an outcome that everyone can agree with. I will use independent and objective judgment in my decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Christine.
Yes, this question asks us to think about guiding the focus on community rather than being overcome by national and political narratives. I'm a professor of philosophy and women's and gender studies, and I teach about social justice theory, and I teach about speech. And what does speech mean? We live in a free speech society. I work in a free speech institution at the university. Free speech encompasses not only civility, but also open dialogue, and also ethical norms that guide free speech. I really like our ethical principles that are posted on our website, on the city website for the government of the city of Chelsea. These ethical principles are, if we adhere to them as city council members, will indeed protect us from any harm that might come from speech that's national or political in origin. But I do think that speech needs to be respected and heard. Debate is also civil. Hearing different opinions and listening to them is part of our open meetings commitments. So in that regard, I am wary of speech that demonstrates possible actions that would violate our non-discrimination ordinance, which is a very strong, inclusive non-discrimination ordinance that would involve discriminatory speech toward groups that are protected by our non-discrimination ordinance. And so I think that free speech can either be censored or it can be used in a hateful way. And I think that city council members take an oath to prevent speech from being geared down those destructive things that are destructive of our community. We protect our community through free speech, civil speech, and non-discrimination. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And now we'd like to move on to closing statements. Because we have so many great candidates running for these three positions, and we only planned about an hour for this, we're going to cut the closing statements to just 1 minute apiece. But I would like to hear you focus on pretty clearly why it is that you're running for city council. And we're going to start with Phil. And you've got 1 minute.
Thank you. I'd be honored to be able to use my time and talents to serve the public, again, in a different capacity. My function on council would be to restore a balance that I believe has become dominated by a particular point of view. Thank you.
Okay, and next, Stephen.
Yes, I mentioned in my introduction some of my experience and professionally and so on, and that is something that I think I can bring to the council in a productive way. But that's not really the reason why I decided to run for city council at this point in time. My decision was basically driven by some of the concerns that have been expressed in both sessions here tonight, where national politics and the polarization that has been exhibited has made a situation that leaves me concerned anyway. And I decided to run to try and do something about that in a sense of interjecting my abilities to try and resolve those issues.
Thank you very much. And Tony.
Thank you, Paul, and Chamber and candidates and community for being here tonight, listening to us and helping. Hopefully, this helps you get closer to making your decision. I wanted to run for council because I wanted to give back to the community that I felt had given me so much. And I want to continue to stay on council, to continue that work, to keep this great community moving forward. Seeing some of the things that we've accomplished in my time on council have been excellent. We are hopefully coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic without seeing any businesses downtown get shuttered as a result of it. That's remarkable. That is not something that too many other towns can say. That is something that this community did, is it came together and supported our local businesses during that time of crisis. That's just one example of what makes this community so great and something I'm so proud to be a part of, and hopefully that the voters let me be part of again. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And next up, David.
Oh,
You're good.
hear me? Okay. I'm running for city council because I love this city. I love this whole community. I've lived here all my life and I've seen so much go on here. And the people are great. And there's so much to do here. The school system, my kids thrived in it. And I just love this town and I want to give back to it. And it's just a passion of mine since I've been here all my life, and I would really like to help out in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christine.
Yes, well, first of all, some of the most important catalysts for me running for city council is that my own skills are very fitted to city council. They're holistic and they can contribute to an equitable and inclusive environment. But my own motivation for running for city council is that I like Chelsea, but I want my city council to represent diversity in some fashion as an ideal. And I think that my running for city council, given my my status as an educator and a teacher in terms of civil rights and inclusiveness, as well as my work as public servant and the extra training I've received in that regard, and being a woman and being a member of various intersecting marginalized groups that are outlined by the non-discrimination ordinance, which is a very, very rich scope of coverage. I think that you will have a more representative city council of your citizens if I'm on the city council. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And finally, Bill.
I just want to say one thing about, again, why I'm running, and that is because I love Chelsea. I will put one of the corollaries to that is that I feel that I can work with people. My entire career, I didn't accomplish anything by myself. It was always done by working with people. To listen to the city, to listen to our citizens, to dream about what our future should look like, and to put policies in place to make those dreams come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So we got through this, and I think it was really great to hear all of your answers, very thoughtful and very caring about the community that we live in. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for being willing to do this tonight, and moreover, to be willing to actually give your time. If you're elected to this position, it's a lot of work for almost no pay. I mean, I admire all of you for it. I'd also like to thank the people who took your time to log in tonight in this Zoom meeting. I know we ran over a little bit. I try not to flap my jaw much longer here, but I have a final thought for you. It is the good fortune of everyone here that we live in a free society where each adult citizen has the right, and I personally would say a duty, to participate in our democratic processes. Please consider everything you've seen and heard here this evening. Find other sources of news about these candidates and what these positions are about. And I urge you to vote for the candidates of your choice on Election Day. Good evening, and I hope you all stay safe and take care of those around you. Thank you very much for your time.